Hello, first graders. Welcome to reading session 5. Today, I'm back in my bag. And today I want to teach you that when readers reread, which is what we worked on last time, when they reread to notice more, they also notice how the parts of a story go together. Kind of like when you work on a puzzle. The pieces fit together in a certain way that make the story connect, okay? So in a couple examples of that might be in Curious George. If you know about him as a character, he gets into a lot of trouble. And throughout this story, I connected the parts together where he is curious and he is curious about the water. Of course, he has to dive in. He's curious about the phone. He accidentally calls the fire department. He's curious about balloons. And in the end, though, the man in the yellow hat always seems to be able to help him get out of trouble. But all those story parts connect together to the finale at the end. Thank goodness for the man in the yellow hat. He's so patient with Curious George. In this particular story, Fancy Nancy, it's in the Delectable Cupcakes. Fancy Nancy is making cupcakes for the bake sale. Of course, she wants them to have lots of sprinkles and things on that because she's fancy. The thing is that she wasn't being a very good listener, and neither was her sister. So I kept track of where the troubles started and a mess because she didn't put him in a safe place. And luckily, Dad saves the day by bringing home more flour because he didn't listen either. It turned out to be a good not listening because he went and bought all the ingredients for more cupcakes, not knowing they had already tried to bake them. Do you see how all those story parts connect together? That's what we're going to work on today. I'm going to add it to our anchor chart so we know what we're working on. We're going to connect parts of the story together. Adding it to the anchor chart. Readers connect parts of the story together. So we're working on when readers reread, they notice how parts of a story go together, kind of like the pieces of a puzzle. So for instance, if I'm working on this, are you seeing where, oh, I think that fits right there. And this is only part of the puzzle that I'm working on. Aha! Do you see this? That's how all the pieces fit together. We're going to notice that in our books as well, how the story parts go together. In Iris and Walter, I'm not even going to open it up. I'm going to do a quick review of some things that connected all the story parts together, and then we're going to read Henry and Mudge today and work on connecting all those parts together. So in the first beginning of the story, they're all excited about the aquarium, but the part that really I had to keep connected was, where's Walter? It was scary, he got lost, he stopped at the coral reef. Then Iris realizes, oh, that is the wrong sleeve I'm holding on to. And then luckily, after they start looking, they find Walter. The trouble ends and they find him by the tank. Those were some important story parts that I had to stay connected with and noticing how they fit together. Today we're going to read Henry and Mudge. And I've read a little bit to you, but today I'm going to read even more and talk about how the story parts are connected. This is the first book of Henry and Mudge, and it helps me with all the rest of the stories that I read about Henry and Mudge when I know how he got Mudge in the first place. In the table of contents, it's so simple that I really have to be a thinker on how all these parts are connected because the table of contents simply says Henry, Mudge, Mudge, Henry, Henry, and Mudge. That becomes important that they're together at the end. Henry had no brothers and no sisters. I want a brother, he told his parents. Sorry, they said. Henry had no friends on his street. I want to live on a different street, he told his parents. Sorry, they said. Henry had no pets at home. I want to have a dog, he told his parents. Sorry, they almost said. But first, they looked at their house with no brothers and sisters. Then they looked at their street with no children. Then they looked at Henry's face. Then they looked at each other. Okay, they said. I want to hug you, Henry told his parents. And he did. So this is where they select Mudge. Oh, and they're just so happy. And here's a little bit about Mudge, what Mudge loves, pretty much everything about Henry. But I'm going to go to this part because this is when I really had to connect all the story parts together. Because one day, Mudge took a walk without Henry. The sun was shining, the birds were flying, the grass smelled sweet. Mudge couldn't wait for Henry, so he left. Ooh. Are you hearing that music? Dun, 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 right? I'm sensing not good. Oh, Mudge. He went down one road, sniffing the bushes, then down another road, kicking up dust. He went through a field, across a stream, into some pine trees, and when he came out on the other side, he was lost. I knew it. That sinking feeling in my stomach, right here, let me know this something was not going to be good, and now Mudge is lost. He couldn't smell Henry. He couldn't smell his front porch. He couldn't smell the street he lived on. Mudge looked all around, and he didn't see anything or anyone he knew. He whined a little, alone without Henry. Then he lay down, alone without Henry. He missed Henry's bed. I'm hearing that sad music at this part. This is terrible. Oh, and Henry thought Mudge Henry thought Mudge would be with him always. He thought Mudge made everything safe. He thought Mudge would never go away. And when Mudge did go away, when Henry called and called, but Mudge didn't come, Henry's heart hurt, and he cried for an hour. But when he finished crying, he said, Mudge loves me. He wouldn't leave. He must be lost. Ah. Are you connecting this to here too? Mudge is just missing. He wouldn't leave. Henry realizes, I have to really keep track of the story. So Henry walked and walked, and he called and called, and he looked and looked for his dog Mudge. He walked down one road, then down another road. The sun shone as Henry ran through a field, calling and calling. Yeah, the sun's going down. Oh, please. The birds flew past as he stood beside a stream, calling and calling. And the tears fell again as he looked at the empty pine trees for his lost dog. Mudge! He called one last time. As I'm connecting the story parts, is this looking familiar? Like perhaps the way that Mudge was going? I hope so. And Mudge woke up from his lonely sleep, then came running. Henry and Mudge, as we could predict from the beginning, they're back together. Every day when Henry woke up, he saw Mudge's big head. And every day when Mudge woke up, he saw Henry's small face. They ate breakfast at the same time. They ate supper at the same time. And when Henry was at school, Mudge just lay around and waited. Mudge never went for a walk without Henry again. And Henry never worried that Mudge would leave. This connected all the story parts together for me, where there's a lesson in the story. And now they know how to stay home and be safe, right? Mudge is staying home and Henry has to do his thing at school. Because sometimes in their dreams, they saw long, silent roads, big, wide fields, deep streams, and pine trees. In those dreams, Mudge was alone and Henry was alone. So when Mudge woke up and he knew Henry was with him, he remembered the dream and stayed closer, right? Together. And when Henry woke up, he knew Mudge was with him. He remembered the dream and the looking and the calling and the fear, and he knew he would never lose Mudge again. Wow. All those story parts connected to where Henry and Mudge are together in the end. Henry and Mudge, the first book. So today we're working on rereading and noticing how the story parts go together, where the trouble starts and ends. We work today on connecting parts of the story together. It's an awesome skill to have, to keep that storyline all connected. As I look at our anchor chart, we have done a lot of things in our beginning of Off We Go, Readers Go on Adventures. We worked on a sneak peek. We kept track of where and when. We thought about predictions, thinking what might happen next. We got really good at a retell, marking important pages to remember our stories. We worked on reread to notice more and more, all those details. And then keeping track of the story and connecting those parts together. Part of your job today is you're going to get a copy of this anchor chart and a suitcase to pack up. And your job today is to choose one of these anchor chart goals to work on. Which one do you think you want to get really good at? Maybe you sometimes forget to do a sneak peek, so maybe that's what you want to do. Or maybe you're like, oh, I'm not always being a thinker. I need to maybe work on predicting. Maybe you want to do our latest, greatest, connecting all those story parts together. Choose one from the chart and write it on a suitcase goal for yourself. We've done goal setting before, so we're familiar with what it means to focus on the one that we want to really get good at. So I'm going to put my name right here on this tag, Ms. DeBoer. Yeah, this is my luggage tag. And I'm going to go back to my anchor chart and think about the one I want to work on most. And I really liked that reread to notice more. So I'm going to write that one. Reread to notice. I'm going to write more in all caps, just like they did on the anchor chart. Reread to notice more. Maybe you want to draw a little book on there for your goal. It's up to you. This is your goal, remember. Okay? Today your task is going to be take a look at the goals we've worked on and choose one that you want to get really good at. And be ready to share that with your friends. We all want to know, what are you going to work on to get better as a reader?